Bats, hibernating in ice cube trays, strapped with napalm, dropped from 5,000 feet over Japan. This is not fiction. This is not a movie plot. This is a United States military weapon that came within months of deployment in World War II. A Pennsylvania dentist convinced the president. Harvard invented the bomb. The Marines built fake Japanese cities and burned them down. And on May 15, 1943, the weapon worked so well it incinerated an entire American airbase by accident. Who thought of this? How did they make it real? And why did it almost burn Japan to ash before anyone heard of Hiroshima? He just watched millions of Mexican free-tailed bats pour from the cave mouth at dusk, a living river 15 feet wide that took hours to empty. The radio crackles. Japan attacked. Adams pulls over. His mind races. Japan's cities are wood and paper. One match could burn a neighborhood. But you need millions of matches in millions of hidden places all at once. Bats roost in attics. Bats fly at night. Bats carry loads. Bats hide in cracks humans can't reach. Adams gets home and starts writing. Years earlier, Adams invented an airmail system that let planes pick up and drop mail without landing. He demonstrated it personally to First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. She took a flight with him. It worked. The post office used it for a decade. So when his bat bomb letter hits Roosevelt's desk, it doesn't get tossed. The president writes a note to Colonel William J. Donovan, head of the Office of Strategic Services. This man is not a nut. It sounds like a perfectly wild idea, but is worth looking into. Donovan reads it. He's enthused. He passes it to Stanley Platt Lovell at the Research and Development Branch. Lovell reports to Vannevar Bush. Bush assigns it to Division 19 of the National Defense Research Committee, the Sandeman Club. The project gets funding. The project gets clearance. The project gets a code name from the Army Chemical Warfare Service. They call it Project X-Ray. He'll spend the next year watching bats burn buildings. Decades later, he writes a book, Bat Bomb World War II's Other Secret Weapon, published by University of Texas Press in 1992. It's the only first-hand account of what happens next. They drive all day and night, sleeping in cars, taking turns. One car covers 350,000 miles. They test species, size, lift capacity, range. By March 1943, they settle on the Mexican free-tailed bat. Scientific name, Tadarida brasiliensis. Length 4.1 centimeters. Weight 13 to 15 grams, same as a British 2-pound coin. Common across the American Southwest. Flies in darkness. Uses echolocation. Can carry twice its body weight in flight. The largest colony they find is in Ney Cave near Bandera, Texas. 20 to 30 million bats. So dense it takes 5 hours for them to exit at dusk, flying in a stream 15 feet in diameter, packed so tight they can barely move their wings. Other sites include Bracken Cave near San Antonio, Devil's Sinkhole near Rock Springs, and Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. Collection is easy. 3 nets on 10-foot poles sweep the cave mouth as bats pour out. 100 bats per 3 passes. They go into cages and refrigeration trucks. Temperature drops. Bats enter hibernation torpor. No food needed. No maintenance. Totally docile. Proof of concept. The Army Chemical Warfare Service says proceed. Organic chemist, professor at Harvard. In 1939, he synthesized vitamin K. In early January 1942, in a basement lab at Harvard's Converse Chemistry Laboratory on Oxford Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Fieser perfects a new incendiary. He calls it napalm, 2 parts. A gelling agent, naphthenic and palmitic acids, hence the name. A volatile petrochemical, gasoline or kerosene, mix them. First it turns to applesauce consistency. Let it sit. It becomes a thick, tough gel. Unlike gasoline that blooms and burns out fast, napalm burns slowly. It sticks to targets. It doesn't need oxygen to stay stable. A bat can breathe next to it. Fieser and his roommate from Harvard, a researcher named Griffin who's on the bat team, swap white phosphorus for napalm. The smaller unit weighs 17 grams, 0.6 ounces. Burns 4 minutes with a 10-inch flame. The larger weighs 28 grams, 1 ounce. Burns 6 minutes with a 12-inch flame. Both are oblong nitrocellulose cases, gun cotton, filled with kerosene thickened with napalm gel. On the side, a capsule holds a firing pin separated from the cartridge by a thin steel wire. The wire sits in a solution of copper chloride. The chemical corrodes the wire slowly. When it breaks, the spring releases the pin. The kerosene ignites. The whole device is called an H2 unit. Fieser tests the first napalm bomb on July 4th, 1942, on the Harvard College soccer field between the business school and the football stadium. It works. Harvard chemist creates weapon of mass fire on Independence Day. The factory that manufactures the H2 units is owned by Bing Crosby, the singer. You can't make an omelet without cracking eggs. Fly to 5,000 feet over a Japanese city just before dawn when bats naturally seek shelter. Drop the bomb. At 4,000 feet, parachute deploys. Descent slows. At 1,000 feet, warming air wakes the bats. The casing sides fall away. Trays separate but stay connected to the parachute. 1,040 bats scatter. Flight radius 20 to 40 miles. They find eaves, attics, rafters, cracks in wooden buildings. They roost. Timers count down. Fires start simultaneously across dozens of square miles. No warning. No way to predict the pattern. No way to fight it all at once. Japan's cities are paper, bamboo, wood. One raid with 10 B-24 bombers, each carrying 100 bat bombs, delivers over 1 million incendiary devices. The chief chemist's report states that regular bombs might start 167 to 400 fires per bomber load. Bat bombs, he calculates, would start 3,625 to 4,748 fires, 12 times the destructive power. This script is researched and factual, drawing from Jack Coofer's first-hand memoir, Bat Bomb World War II's Other Secret Weapon, published by University of Texas Press, declassified Chemical Warfare Service reports held at the National Archives, the Asia-Pacific Journal article on Dugway Proving Grounds Japanese Village by researcher Kerry Plung, published November 3, 2023, and Robert Sherrod's History of Marine Corps. Aviation in World War II. These are primary sources, participant accounts, and academic deep dives, not Wikipedia summaries. Now back to the information. Bomb drops. Parachute deploys. Casing opens. Problem. Most bats don't wake up. They're too cold. They plummet to the desert floor like stones. The few that wake escape before anyone can attach real bombs. The test fails. Bats everywhere. None where they're supposed to be. The team relocates to Carlsbad Army Airfield Auxiliary Air Base near Carlsbad, New Mexico. Closer to the caves. Easier resupply. They fine-tune temperatures. They test cooling rates. They test revival times. Several auxiliary buildings incinerate. The base is brand new, just completed. Now it's ash. One account says a general's car was parked near the tower. 2 bats roosted underneath. The car explodes. The general is not pleased. Adams later says, in a way, this accident proves the bat bomb works. Look what 6 bats could do. The Navy renames it Project X-Ray, the name that sticks. They pass it to the Marine Corps in December. The Marines are fighting in the Pacific. They want every weapon they can get. They relocate testing to Marine Corps Air Station El Centro, California. They redesign the trays, egg crate configuration, better bat spacing, better ventilation, better weight distribution. By December 13th, 1943, they run successful drops. 30 fires start, 22 burn out on their own, 8 keep burning. 4 require professional firefighters to extinguish. Not perfect, but progress. They order more powerful incendiary units. They schedule the final test, southwest of Salt Lake City, 801,505 acres. 1,252 square miles, larger than Rhode Island, high security facility for chemical and biological weapons testing, isolated, controlled, perfect. The Japanese village is designed by Antonin Raymond, a Czech-American architect who spent years building in Japan before the war. He knows the materials, he knows the construction. He's not proud of the work, but believes it will shorten the war. Boris Laming, who studied the 1923 Tokyo fire, contributes. Jewish-German architects Erich Mendelsohn and Konrad Wachsmann, part of the Gropius group at Harvard, designed the German village. Both fled the Nazis. Now they're helping burn replicas of German homes. The irony is not lost on anyone. Chests, hibachi stoves, sliding shoji screens, tatami mats. German duplexes have 6 apartments each, cinder block and masonry construction, flammable attics. Everything is sourced to match the real thing. Prisoners from Utah State Prison provide labor. The work takes 44 days. By May 17, 1943, testing begins. It runs through July 16th. Planes drop M50 thermite bombs, M52 bombs, M47 bombs, with coconut oil rubber and gasoline, and the M69 napalm cluster bomb that will later devastate Tokyo in March 1945. They test from high altitude. It doesn't work. They test from 5,000 feet. It works better. Some tests use scaffolding and utility poles instead of planes. The villages are destroyed and completely rebuilt 3 to 4 times. Parts are cannibalized when usable. At least 27 documented bombing runs hit these structures. The sterile town stood several miles apart on the otherwise empty Utah plain, like abandoned movie sets picturing the aftermath of a devastating plague. The team loads armed bats into the casings. They drop them over Japanese village. The bats disperse. They roost in attic beams, under eaves, and ceiling corners exactly as predicted. The timers count down. Fires erupt. The chief of incendiary testing at Dugway writes his report. A reasonable number of destructive fires can be started in spite of the extremely small size of the units. The main advantage of the units would seem to be their placement within the enemy structures without the knowledge of the householder or fire watchers, thus allowing the fire to establish itself before being discovered. Coofer recalls the fires spreading like paper lanterns, glowing from within, tentacles of flame dancing out from beneath. Roof tiles. The test works, the bat bomb works. 10 B-24 Liberator bombers, flying from Alaska, each loaded with 100 bat bomb casings, each casing holding 1,040 bats, would deliver 1,040,000 fire-starting mammals over Osaka Bay's industrial cities. The Marines guard the Texas bat caves around the clock. No one gets in. No one talks. Project X-ray is top secret, classification level, equivalent to the Manhattan Project. Mid-1945 is too late. Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King, Chief of Naval Operations, hears the projections. He asks when the bats will be combat ready. Mid-1945, they tell him. He hears about another project. Something happening in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Something with Adams. Something that might be ready sooner. Something that might end the war faster. Adams attends a meeting in Washington, D.C. about appropriations. He's confused. He tells his team later some general I met regarding appropriations, confused our secret project with another secret project that's apparently going on somewhere. It's the silliest nonsense you ever heard of. That nonsense is the atomic bomb. Years later, Kuffer writes, there was no point in fiddling with bats when they had something like the atomic bomb. Not because it doesn't work, not because it's insane, because it's too slow. By this point, $2 million have been spent, equivalent to $34.9 million in 2024 currency. 2 years of research, millions of bats captured, hundreds of tests, 3 air bases involved, one of them burned down, 2 fake villages built and destroyed multiple times. The weapon is proven. It works. It's canceled. Adams is devastated. For the rest of his life, he insists the bat bomb would have been more effective than the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He's quoted in multiple sources. Think of thousands of fires breaking out simultaneously over a circle of 40 miles in diameter for every bomb dropped. Japan could have been devastated, yet with small loss of life. He calculates that bats scatter up to 20 miles from release point. A single bomber could ignite fires across 1,600 square miles. No radiation, no immediate mass casualties, just structural destruction that forces Japan to surrender without the horror of atomic weapons. Whether he's right, we'll never know. Stanley P. Lovell, Director of Research and Development for the Office of Strategic Services, calls the project Die Fledermaus Farce, the Bat Farce, after the German operetta. But Lovell wasn't at Dugway. He didn't see the Japanese village burn. The M69 cluster bombs, the same design tested at Dugway's Japanese village, lodge in ceiling beams exactly as planned. 16 square miles of Tokyo burn. General Curtis LeMay, who directs the raid, later writes, "We scorched and boiled and baked to death more people in Tokyo on that night than went up in vapor at Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. Estimates range from 80,000 to 100,000 dead in one night." The M69 bombs used in this raid were refined at Dugway Proving Ground in 1943 and 1944, tested on the same structures where the bat bomb proved effective. The bat bomb was designed to do the same thing, but with a 12-fold increase in ignition points, spreading fires too widely to fight, all while avoiding the single massive bomber formation that gives advance warning and lets people flee to shelters. The atomic bombs end the debate. August 6, 1945, Hiroshima. August 9th, Nagasaki. Japan surrenders August 15th. The bat bomb never deploys. Project X-ray files get classified. Jack Kuffer goes to USC, becomes a filmmaker, works on Disney's True Life Adventure series, shoots nature documentaries, gets nominated for an Academy Award for cinematography on Jonathan Livingston's Seagull in 1973. He sails to the Galapagos Islands with Conrad Hall, another future cinematographer. They live off the land for a year, filming wildlife. Kuffer writes 11 books. In 1992, he publishes Bat Bomb, the only detailed account of the project by someone who was there. He dies July 30th, 2021, at age 96. When Vietnam War protests erupt in the 60s and 70s, students at Harvard demand accountability. Fieser writes a letter to President Nixon in June 1972, suggesting an international agreement to outlaw napalm. Nixon's science advisor sends a brush-off reply. Fieser later tells the Harvard Crimson, "We never thought of any anti-personnel use when developing napalm. We were thinking in terms of wooden structures, factories." But Project X-ray documents show Fieser knew exactly what the bat bomb was designed to do: burn homes while people slept. The test village at Dugway included mock-up sleeping figures. Fieser designed the H2 unit to lodge in residential attics and ignite after occupants were asleep. He dies July 25th, 1977. His napalm formula remains in use by militaries worldwide. Fieser was a contender for the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1941 and 42 for his vitamin K synthesis, but no prizes were awarded those years. The 1943 award goes to Henrik Dahm for discovering vitamin K and Edward Doisy for discovering its chemical nature. Fieser gets nothing. He invents a fried chicken vending machine. He never stops believing in the bat bomb. He dies in 1970 at age 89. His papers include drawings of the bomb casings, temperature charts for bat hibernation, calculations of dispersion radius, and letters to military officials insisting the weapon could have won the war without atomic devastation. None of it matters. The atomic bomb made the decision. Stanley Lovell, who mocked the project, later admits the OSS evaluated dozens of unconventional weapons during the war. Pigeon-guided missiles, rat bombs, exploding coal, assassination devices. The bat bomb wasn't the craziest. It was just the one that accidentally worked too well. The British Special Operations Executive develops a rat bomb during the same period. Dead rats, stuffed with plastic explosives, meant to be left in German factories where workers would toss them into boilers. The rats explode. The boilers explode. The factories shut down. The Germans find the rats before they're used and put them on display to show how devious the Allies are. It backfires. German factory workers become paranoid, inspecting every rat corpse, wasting time and resources. The British call it a success, even though the bombs never detonated. Operational. 1 million bats with napalm bombs would have been released over Japan's cities. What happens then? We don't know. Adams claims small loss of life. Structural devastation, yes, but people could evacuate once fires started. The buildings burn, not the occupants. But the Dugway tests included furnished homes with mock occupants and beds. The timers were designed to ignite after people fell asleep. The H2 units were made to lodge in attics directly above sleeping quarters. The whole strategy depends on fires starting before detection. How do you evacuate a city when 1,000 fires erupt simultaneously in hidden attics across 40 square miles? How do you fight that? You don't, you let it burn. Adams either didn't think it through or chose not to see it. A document from the Chemical Warfare Service dated March 1944. It's a logistics memo about bat mortality rates during testing. Estimated bat casualties during the project, over 1 million. That's just testing, not deployment. Testing. They went through 1 million bats perfecting a weapon that never saw combat. The Mexican free-tailed bat population in Texas caves was estimated at 30 to 50 million in the 1940s. Project X-Ray, if deployed, would have needed continuous harvests from multiple cave sites to maintain operational supply. The ecological impact was never assessed. No one cared. The bats were expendable. The mission mattered. He didn't question it. No one did. This was war. This was science. This was necessity. Decades later, writing the book, he admits ambivalence. The project was absurd. It was brilliant. It was horrifying. It was American ingenuity applied to systematic destruction. He calls it World War II's other secret weapon, the one history forgot because a bigger secret weapon erased it. The ruins of Japanese village still stand in restricted sections of the proving ground. Charred timbers, melted roof tiles, concrete foundations cracked by repeated fires. A 2001 stabilization report by Carey and Company notes, the German village structures are better preserved because masonry survives fire. The Japanese structures, built lighter, burn more completely. The ash pits remain. Soil cores taken from the test sites show layers of carbon and napalm residue. Depth analysis dates them to 1943 and 1944. The exact spots where bat bombs ignited mock Japanese homes before the same bomb design incinerated real Japanese homes in Tokyo. He writes, he was not proud of the work but believed it helped hasten the end of the war. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't describe the buildings in detail. He spent decades in Japan before the war, designing homes, schools, embassies. He knew the families who lived in structures like the ones he replicated at Dugway. He knew what the tests meant. He never mentions Project X-Ray. Maybe he didn't know about the bats. Maybe he did, and chose not to write about it. His papers at the Library of Congress contain blueprints for the Dugway structures, but no notes about their purpose beyond incendiary testing. The blueprints are meticulous. Beam dimensions, roof pitch, ventilation gaps. Everything engineered to burn efficiently. This is how you measure success in war. How fast can we destroy what we built to look like the enemy's home? Erich Mendelsohn and Konrad Wachsmann, the Jewish architects who designed German Village, never speak publicly about Dugway. Both fled Nazi Germany in the 30s. Both lost family in the Holocaust. Both helped design structures at Dugway that replicated the homes they escaped from so the Allies could practice burning them. The psychological weight of that is unrecorded. Wachsmann's papers include technical drawings of the German Village duplexes, but no personal reflections. Mendelssohn's archives contain nothing about Dugway at all. The work is erased or buried. They moved on. The war ended. The village is burned. History forgot. They flew in circles, confused by daylight, timers ticking. Several landed on the observation bunker where researchers watched. Others flew toward the German village outside the target zone. The test was aborted. Marines scrambled to recapture the bats before the timers expired. They got most of them. 3 escaped. 2 were found later dead, bombs undetonated, stuck in sagebrush half a mile from the test site. 1 was never found. A report from December 1943 notes this incident and recommends stricter launch timing protocols. The missing bat is recorded as presumed dead, unable to trigger bomb mechanism without proper roost attachment. But there's no confirmation. Somewhere in the Utah desert, there's a Mexican free-tailed bat that died in 1943 carrying a napalm bomb that never ignited, and no one knows where. Not the weapon that almost was. Not the fires that could have burned. The details that don't fit the narrative. The bat that escaped. The villages that still stand in ruins. The architects who built them and never spoke. The teenager who watched it happen and wrote a book 50 years later when most of the team was dead. The admiral who canceled it because another weapon was faster. The dentist who spent his life insisting he was right. The chemist who invented napalm for the bats and then watched it burn children in Vietnam and wrote one letter to Nixon and got a polite refusal. The million bats that died in testing so the weapon could work perfectly when it was finally deployed. Except it never was. It includes a photo of a Mexican free-tailed bat, a diagram of the H-2 bomb, and a 3-sentence explanation. An experimental incendiary weapon using bats was developed in 1942 through 1944, but canceled before deployment. Testing proved the concept viable, but the atomic bomb made it obsolete. Project X-Ray remains one of the most unusual weapons programs in American military history. That's it. 3 sentences. The exhibit next to it is about Project Pigeon, B.F. Skinner's pigeon-guided missiles. The one after that is about the Panjandrum, the British rocket-propelled wheel that spun out of control and nearly killed spectators during its only test. The bat bomb gets the same treatment as weapons that failed, but it didn't fail, it worked. The base it burned was proof. In 2018, a doctoral student at the University of Utah named Carrie Plung writes an academic paper for the Asia-Pacific Journal titled The Japanese Village at Dugway Proving Ground, an unexamined context to the firebombing of Japan. Published November 3, 2023. It's the first comprehensive historical analysis of the Dugway tests and their connection to the Tokyo firebombing strategy. Plung argues that Japanese village testing in 1943 directly influenced the shift from precision bombing to carpet incendiary bombing of civilian areas. The data from Dugway, including the bat bomb tests, proved that dispersed ignition points in residential districts were more effective than concentrated bombing of military targets. This validates civilians as acceptable targets of air warfare. The bat bomb wasn't a sideshow. It was part of the research that justified burning Tokyo. Bat bombs scattered self-guided incendiaries over the widest area with the least initial payload weight. If the goal was maximum fires with minimum bomber exposure, the bat bomb won. The Marines knew this. Fleet Admiral King knew this. The decision to cancel wasn't tactical, it was temporal. The atomic bomb was faster. The blast wave flattens 4 square miles. 70,000 dead immediately. Another 70,000 from radiation over the next 5 years. August 9th, Nagasaki. Fat Man detonates. 40,000 dead immediately. The Japanese surrender August 15th. The war ends. The bat bomb stays classified. Files sit in the National Archives for decades. Most are declassified in the 70s and 80s. Some remain restricted. Why? What else is in there? The publicly available documents describe the weapon, the tests, the results, the cancellation. They don't describe contingency plans. They don't describe what happens if deployment goes forward and Japan doesn't surrender. They don't describe the ecological modeling of harvesting 30 million bats from Texas caves to sustain ongoing operations. They don't describe the psychological warfare component, the plan to announce after the first raid what weapon was used, to make the enemy understand that nature itself was weaponized against them. Those documents, if they exist, are still sealed. King dies a fleet admiral, never second-guessing the call. Kufer dies at 96, the last witness, the only one who wrote it all down. The bats die unnamed, uncounted, 1 million strong in testing alone, deployed against an enemy they never met, carrying fire they didn't understand, credited with burning 1 American airbase and a general's car and providing the data that proved dispersed incendiaries work better than anything else, except Adams. The structures are listed in the Historic American Engineering Record under designation JAR, number UT-35. Documented in 1984, updated in 2001. The report notes the German village is better preserved. The Japanese village is mostly foundation remnants, scattered timbers and ash. Soil samples contain elevated carbon from repeated fires. Residual chemical traces match napalm, thermite, and kerosene. The site is contaminated. Biohazard protocols apply. This is where the bat bomb burned a fake Japan, so the real Japan could be burned faster. An airbase burns by accident. The Marines build fake Japanese cities. They test the weapon, it works. They schedule production. The atomic bomb cancels it. Tokyo burns anyway with different bombs tested at the same site. 100,000 people die in one night. The bat bomb files get classified. 50 years later, the teenager writes a book. The academic writes a paper. The museum makes an exhibit panel, 3 sentences. Most unusual weapons programs. The ruins sit in the Utah desert, restricted, forgotten. They don't know that in 1943 their ancestors were packed in ice cube trays, strapped with napalm, dropped from bombers, and proved that the United States could weaponize nature on a scale never attempted before or since. All materials are to be secured, all personnel are to be reassigned, all bats are to be released back to point of origin where feasible. Signed, Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King, Chief of Naval Operations. The word feasible stands out. Where feasible? How many bats were returned? How many were deemed not feasible? How many died in refrigeration? How many died in testing? How many burned with the bombs they carried? The memo doesn't say. The records don't specify. Over 1 million bats, the estimate goes. Over. Not exact, not named, not tracked individually. Expendable assets in a program that almost changed history but didn't, because history moved faster than bats can fly. He proposes using remaining bat bomb materials for training exercises in fire suppression. The reply comes back 3 days later. All Project X-ray materials have been destroyed or repurposed. The H-2 bomb casings were melted down. The napalm units were transferred to conventional incendiary production. The bat trays were discarded. The only items retained are documentation, blueprints, and one sample H-2 unit held at the Chemical Warfare Service Technical Library at Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland. That sample sits in storage for 30 years. In 1974, it's discovered corroded beyond safety. It's incinerated. The last physical piece of the bat bomb, gone. UN forces drop approximately 200,000 tons of napalm on Korea, twice what fell on Japan. The weapon they carried is everywhere. Fieser's formula becomes public in 1952. Militaries worldwide adopt it. Napalm becomes universal. Fieser tells reporters in 1973 we were developing napalm for wooden structures, but his own notes describe the H-2 units designed for residential deployment. That's war, he argues. Nixon's advisor replies, your suggestion will be given attention. It's not. In 2023, Harvard Crimson investigates his legacy. The university never apologized. The chemistry lab is now Converse Memorial Laboratory. No plaque mentions it. Carlsbad, burning May 15th, 1943. Japanese village built in 44 days, destroyed 3 times. King canceling August 1944, Tokyo burning March 9th, 1945. Hiroshima, August 6th, surrender August 15th. Every date connects. The committee concluded X-ray is effective. The chemist calculated 12-fold increase per mission. The only reason it didn't deploy was timing. If the atomic bomb hadn't worked, the bat bomb was next. You can't fight an invisible weapon distributed by nature. Maybe that's more humane than atomic annihilation, maybe worse. History chose the flash. The weapon stayed classified until most who remembered were dead. Too uncomfortable.